You're no longer needed. Get out. Just leave. After 13 long years of caring for my mother-in-law Rose, the funeral left just 3 of us in the family. My husband Jack, my father-in-law Robert, and me. During the funeral, Robert and Jack seemed distant, their minds clearly elsewhere. It wasn't a look of grief. They seemed almost excited. As I prepared dinner that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming to an end. And then out of nowhere, Robert spoke up. I've been meaning to tell you this since you moved in. Your cooking has always been awful. His words hit me like a slap, and I instinctively turned to Jack. Jack's face bore the same smug expression as his father's. Without a word, he handed me a stack of papers. Thanks for all your hard work. Really, thanks. Now that Mom's care is over, so is our arrangement. Here, these are the divorce papers. Make sure you file them, alright? There weren't many things Jack had personally handed me over the years. Just the wedding ring on our wedding day, and now these divorce papers. For years, I had poured my soul into this family, but it was painfully clear now. They had never considered me family. I lowered my head, my shoulders trembling. I tried my best to hold it back, but something slipped out. A laugh. But I understand, I said softly. After watching these 2 men bask in their smugness, I quietly signed the divorce papers. I held those papers close to my chest, as if they were a lifeline. Everything was going according to plan. I'll take care of filing these right away. Don't worry about it, I said. Goodbye. With that, I loaded the bags I had packed earlier into the car and drove straight to the courthouse. Once the divorce was official, I could finally set my plan into motion. A plan to drag both of these men straight to hell. My name is Eva, and I'm a 39-year-old full-time working housewife. Or at least, that's how I used to describe myself. Until recently, I've been running my in-laws' small family store by myself, all while caring for my mother-in-law, Rose, and managing the household. I met Jack, my husband, 14 years ago at my old job. Don't worry, it's fine. This doesn't even count as a mistake. Jack was my supervisor at the time. I'm so sorry. This was all my fault. It was just after my probation period when I accidentally wired funds to the wrong client, creating a mess for both the company and the client. It was a fixable mistake, but for someone trying to establish herself as a professional, it felt devastating. Back then, Jack had stepped in to clean up the mess. He even visited the client personally and managed to secure additional businesses. That was the moment it all began. Jack pursued me relentlessly, and without thinking too deeply, I accepted his proposal and the ring he offered. Mom had a stroke and I wanted to put her mind at ease. That's why I want us to get married right away. Looking back, it seemed like a reasonable excuse at the time, but back then I had an overly romanticized view of what it meant to be part of a family. You see, I didn't have anyone I could truly call family. I lost my parents at a young age and spent my childhood being shuffled between relatives. That experience left me longing for a family of my own, desperately so. That's why I didn't think clearly, or rather I couldn't. So Eva, you'll be handling Mom's care, right? Wait, what? The moment our small private wedding was over and we were finally alone, Jack dropped the bombshell. I'm the breadwinner, right? But even the breadwinner can't carry the whole family on his back. We're just splitting the duties. It's teamwork. I noticed while we were dating that Jack had this habit of repeating himself when he was pleased with something. But I want to work. Jack just shrugged and offered another suggestion. And how about this? You can manage our family store. What? Mom's been running it alone for years, and as you know, she's struggling with the aftermath of her stroke. I decided to go along with Jack's plan. I felt like I was being entrusted with something important, that I was needed. If you've got time to help out at the store, why don't you wash our cars instead? You know who puts food on this table, don't you? Robert had always been dismissive of the store's importance. Even on his days off, instead of helping out, Robert would spend the day cruising around in his car. Jack, could you talk to your dad about helping out? It doesn't have to be much, but could you ask him to pitch in with something? Yeah, I'll think about it. Jack brushed me off with vague promises. By the 3rd time I brought it up, Jack lost his temper and snapped at me. Both Dad and I are exhausted from working. You're the wife, just handle it yourself. Or are you saying you don't want to take care of Mom and do the housework? Stop being so spoiled. This time it was me who fell silent. The kind, empathetic supervisor I had once admired in Jack seemed like a distant memory. Was this truly the same man I'd fallen in love with? It was then that a small but persistent doubt began to take root in my mind. Was this really what being a family was supposed to be? At the time, I had no one I could turn to for support. Rose never complained about the care I provided for her, but I often wondered what she truly thought of behind her stoic, expressionless face. One evening during dinner, Robert decided to start trouble. Did you make this, Eva? Yes, I did. This is awful. What is this, glazed salmon? It's so overcooked it's like chewing on cardboard. Yeah, he's right. Jack eagerly chimed in, piling onto the criticism of my cooking. And the soup? There's absolutely no flavor. Can't you at least try to make it taste good? I apologized over and over. To be fair, the meal wasn't my best work, but I didn't deserve this. Then Jack turned to his mother, dragging her into it. Mom, say something to her. She needs to hear it. His slimy, insistent tone made me feel cornered, helpless, like a fish on a chopping block. But then something unexpected happened. Both of you, that's enough. Rose stood up for me. Who's the one preparing dinner for all 4 of us every day? Criticizing without a single word of gratitude is just plain wrong. There was passion in her voice, a rare moment of anger from her. The 2 men fell silent, their heads bowed. Well, bad food is still bad food. I'm not eating this. Let's just go grab some pizza. Yeah, good idea. And clean this up while we're gone. With that, they left, leaving just Rose and me in the house. I'm sorry, Ava. No, it's my fault for being a bad cook. Are you a professional chef? What? You're a homemaker, and you've been doing more than enough already. Her words brought tears to my eyes before I even realized it. I never had a real family growing up, so I don't know if I'm doing it right. Am I doing okay? As always, Rose's expression didn't waver. From then on, taking care of her started to feel less like a chore and more like a blessing. We talked about everything. Our frustrations, her memories, even the challenges of running the family store. Her shop was a small family-owned business. It sold local goods and nostalgic, old-fashioned treats for tourists. Since the town was a touristic destination, business dropped significantly in the off-season. You can't rush things, Eva. Rose often reminded me to stay calm. If you panic and discount too much, you're just guaranteeing a loss. Profit isn't just about sales. It's what's left after you subtract costs, inventory, and wages. It's all about how you sell and, more importantly, who you're selling to. Taking her advice to heart, I started thinking about who would actually want our unsold products. One day, while Rose and I were minding the store together, "Excuse me, could I ask what made you decide to buy this?" Rose was speaking to a young man who had just purchased one of our least popular items. I work at a senior care facility. Our patients really love this candy. After thanking him and seeing him off, Rose leaned over and whispered to me, "There's your answer." At first, I didn't understand what she meant. It means there's demand for this product in senior care facilities. Her explanation was like a light bulb going off in my mind. I compiled a list of senior care facilities in the area. Then I approached them, offering to sell the candy at an affordable price and handle the delivery myself. The idea was a huge success. Not only did we clear out old stock, but the candy became one of our top-selling items. It's all thanks to your hard work, Eva. Rose wouldn't stop praising me, giving me credit at every opportunity. The time I spent with her felt like the love I'd lost when my parents passed. It brought me a sense of happiness I hadn't felt in years. But Jack and Robert were far from pleased with our success. Don't get a big head just because you sold some cheap candy. Don't forget you've still got chores to do. Who do you think you are anyway? Rose and I ignored their comments, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. From that day on, the divide between Rose and me and Jack and Robert became unbridgeable. Conversations between us became almost non-existent. Rose and I quietly built a world of our own. The time I spent with Rose became my only solace. Despite her physical limitations, she had a strong and positive spirit. Through our conversations, I began to regain my strength. After Robert retired and started spending more time at home, Rose seemed to dread being around him. Rose was happiest when she was at the store, chatting with customers and staying busy. Jack, on the other hand, was rarely home, always claiming he had overtime or business trips. One evening, when both Robert and Jack were out of the house, I was having dinner with Rose, as we often did when it was just the 2 of us. We had just finished saying grace when the sudden ringing of my phone shattered the quiet. The caller was from a hospital in the neighboring county, a number I didn't recognize. Jack has been brought in by ambulance. We need a family member to come immediately. I had no idea why Jack was in another county, but there was no time to question it. Dinner was instantly forgotten as I panicked about what to do next. "I'll come with you." I was embarrassed by how much comfort her words brought me. Having her with me felt like a safety net. At the same time, I worried about taking Rose, with her physical limitations, on such a long trip. "Let's have my brother drive us." "Your brother? He's responsible, trustworthy, and most importantly, quick. And he doesn't drink, as you know." At the mention of her brother, I immediately pictured Uncle Paul's cheerful, reassuring smile. After Rose called and explained the situation, Paul arrived in no time. "What a tough break for you both. Let's get going." Paul offered words of encouragement and casually took on the task of driving us. While we were driving, see if you can get more details about Jack's condition. When I called the police for more information, I couldn't believe what they told me. Jack had eaten some turban snail while having dinner at a local inn. I'm partly to blame for this. What do you mean? Did Jack not know he's allergic to shellfish? I turned to Rose, seeking answers. It's not all shellfish, and turban snail isn't something people eat often. I did mention it to both him and his father, but it seems they didn't pay attention. Admittedly, Rose had warned them, but I couldn't help but feel that this was karma for how little respect Jack had ever shown Rose. The hospital staff mentioned that Jack would likely need an extended stay. I had already packed a week's worth of clothes and essentials, just in case. Weren't they able to get in touch with Robert? The hospital said they'd already informed him. Who knows what he's doing, I thought, as we finally arrived at the hospital. We checked in and met with the doctor to hear his explanation. We stopped by Jack's room, where he was hooked up to an IV, sleeping soundly, without a care in the world. With nothing more to do, we decided to head home. But not before Rose asked to use the restroom. I took her to the accessible restroom on the first floor. Afterward, as we were heading back to the car in the dimly lit hospital, a familiar voice echoed from the lobby. There was Robert, talking to a young woman I didn't recognize. Confused, I quickly pulled Rose behind a corner to hide. I'm sorry, Anna. I had no idea Jack was allergic to shellfish. When Robert referred to me as that woman, I saw Rose's face darken. It's all because that woman didn't even mention something this important. When Robert referred to me as that woman, I saw Rose's face darken. I couldn't help but wonder, was this woman his mistress? Oh, no way. Poor Jack. What is his wife even doing? She's not a wife, she's just a housemaid. We gave her the title of wife just to take care of Rose, but she can't even do that properly. Robert's words made me want to storm out and confront him. Don't rush in. As always, Rose reminded me to stay calm. With her unsteady hand, she motioned toward the exit, urging me to leave. I followed her lead. Paul noticed the tears welling up in my eyes, but said nothing, simply giving me a look of quiet understanding. On the drive home, I could no longer hold back my feelings. I want a divorce, right now. Knowing they see me like that, I can't bear to stay any longer. I hated the thought of leaving Rose behind, and I couldn't stay with people who saw me as nothing more than a servant. If I were in your shoes, I'd do the same. But Eva, don't rush into anything. There was a mysterious calmness about Rose. Let's play a little game. I'm going to talk to myself for a moment, and you'll talk to yourself too, okay? At her request, even Uncle Paul joined in, all of us answering back as though lost in thought. Time passed, and now here we are. I sat on a bench outside the operating room of a city hospital, trembling as I prayed for her life. Not long after that night, Rose had been hospitalized. The doctors diagnosed her with normal pressure hydrocephalus, a complication of her earlier stroke. She had always been fiercely independent, determined to do everything herself, but over time she lost the ability to walk and eventually developed dementia. I was the only one in the family who stepped up to care for her. You're still wasting time taking care of Mom? You're pathetic, you know that? Don't be so harsh, Jack. She's just a sad little woman, addicted to her own murderdom. Every time I left for the hospital to care for Rose, Jack and Robert mocked me, treating me like a pitiful nuisance. Every time I stepped out, I clenched my fists and steeled myself, focusing on Rose's care and blocking out their words. This was a battle. I deflected Jack's insults and Robert's biting comments with practiced indifference. With every jab, my resolve only grew stronger. I won't let them break me. Although I worked hard to keep the shop running, caring for Rose was always my top priority. Before her dementia, Rose had told me not to worry about her, but I knew she understood when I shifted my focus away from the store. Even the words of our customers gave me strength. How's your mother-in-law doing? I hope she gets better soon. I'd love to see her again. Their words were an irreplaceable source of encouragement for me. When I thought about it that way, Jack and Robert's insults were nothing more than background noise. Noise doesn't just go away. So why waste energy fighting it? Instead, I built a foundation where I could win. That foundation came from Rose's ideas, Uncle Paul's support, and my own determination. Together we worked to build a plan to finally show Jack and Robert up. When Rose first shared her idea, Uncle Paul and I both agreed, saying this could really work. But every battle comes with sacrifices. In this case, it was Rose who chose to bear the weight of that sacrifice. It has to be this way, Eva. I've always felt like I've never truly accomplished anything in my life. What? It's something I've thought about for years. Am I going to leave this world without ever achieving anything meaningful? So please, let me do this. Let this be my something. Her calm determination mixed with the sound of my sobs filled the room. Despite my tears, I listened closely to every detail of her plan. I believe you're the only person I can truly trust in this family. That's why I need you to take this." She handed me a trust deed. It stated that ownership of the house and the family store had been transferred to me. Are you really sure?" "Yes, I don't have much time left, but you deserve the chance to start a new life." I couldn't hold back my tears as she spoke. Her plan was clear. She wanted to free me from Robert and Jack and help me reclaim my life. And finally, the time had come. With Uncle Paul and Rose's other relatives by my side at the hospital, the nurse came to deliver the news. She's gone. After Rose's funeral, which marked the end of 13 years of caregiving, it was just me, Jack, and Robert left in the house. I prepared dinner, setting the table for just the three of us. The absence of one very important place setting was impossible to ignore. As always, we said grace before eating. Robert sat there smirking. I glanced nervously at Robert, then looked up to Jack for some kind of reassurance. But Jack's faint, mocking grin was a mirror image of his father's. "Well, this is the end." "Yeah, it's finally over." Their faces were filled with a twisted sense of relief. "There's something I've been meaning to say. I've wanted to say it for years." "Eva, are you listening?" "What is it, Robert?" "From the very beginning, your cooking has been absolutely disgusting." Jack immediately jumped in, eager to add his own critique. "Yeah, I was always so bland. Honestly, I'd rather eat shellfish and end up in the ER again than choke down your cooking." Jack's words carried a bitter, mocking jab as if to say he'd rather die than eat my food. "You're useless now. Get out. Get out." As Robert's words sank in, I turned to look at Jack. Jack handed me a stack of papers, wearing the same smug expression as his father. "Thanks for everything." "Really, thank you. Our arrangement is officially over. Here you go. Divorce papers." Jack seemed almost cheerful as he shoved the papers into my hands. The day he gave me my wedding ring and the day he handed me these papers, they both felt equally empty. That was all it amounted to. I slumped down my head, my shoulders trembling. I tried desperately to hold it back, but something spilled out despite my efforts. It was laughter. Everything was going exactly as planned. Robert and Jack must have thought I'd finally lost my mind. For a brief moment, guilt flickered across their faces. But with no love or trust left for me, they quickly joined forces again. "Get out! Get out!" The two of them laughed as they looked down on me. "Don't worry, Jack. I'll take care of it right away." With that, I loaded my pre-packed belongings into the car and headed to the county clerk's office in the courthouse. The clerk at the county's office gave me a puzzled look. She probably thought only an abuse victim or a con artist would be so giddy filing for divorce. I couldn't blame her for thinking that. In a way, I was a little bit of both. And now the real work begins. The next day, I was at my Uncle Paul's house, the man who had been supporting me behind the scenes. "You did it, Eva. It's all settled now." "Yes. Now it's time to let Robert and Jack know what's coming." I took a moment to gather myself at Paul's house before diving into the next phase of our plan. It was time to carry out the plan Rose had entrusted to me. And with that, I took my first step toward dragging Jack and Robert into the hell they deserved. The next day, I sent Robert and Jack a formal letter. The letter explained that they needed to attend a meeting at a law office to discuss important matters regarding the family estate. It might have caught them off guard, but I knew one thing for certain. There was no way they could ignore this summons. The following day, I arrived at the law office ahead of time. Uncle Paul and the attorney he had arranged were already there, waiting. Nervous? A little, but this is something I've been waiting a long time to do. His words gave me the courage to take a deep breath. Then I heard the familiar sound of footsteps echoing in the lobby. It was Robert and Jack. They pushed open the office door and walked in. "What's the big idea calling us here?" "You don't have any business interfering with family matters." Their arrogance was as palpable as ever, but today was different. "Shall we get started?" I calmly motioned for them to sit, and the attorney opened a file. "First, we'll discuss the distribution of Rose's assets based on her will." At the mention of Rose's will, their expressions shifted. "Mom's estate? It's obviously ours, right?" "Of course it is. I worked hard my whole life for that house." I smirked internally. I knew exactly how much hard work they had really done, and it wasn't much. Actually, before her passing, Rose transferred ownership of both the family home and the store to Eva. The room fell silent. What? What the hell does that mean? That's ridiculous. That can't possibly be true. Robert and Jack shot to their feet, shouting in unison. But I remained calm. It's all legally valid, and we have the paperwork to prove it. Here are the signed documents. You're welcome to review them. Robert's hands trembled as he grabbed the papers, his face turning pale as he read. Why? Why would Mom do something like this? Because I was the only one in this house who ever supported her. Jack had no response to that. She knew how little respect the two of you had for her. Even so, she still cared about you both until the very end. Robert and Jack exchanged uneasy glances. Perhaps it was the first time they realized they were truly cornered. Their eyes turned to me, filled with disbelief and anger. Eva, did you manipulate Mom? Is that what this is? Yeah, you must have done something shady behind our backs. I had to suppress a laugh at how predictably desperate they sounded. Manipulate her? Do something shady? Do you even know who Rose was? She wasn't some naive, gullible woman you could trick. My words made them falter, if only for a moment. I seized the silence and continued. She saw everything you did. She knew exactly how little you valued her. She knew you thought of her as nothing more than a burden. Jack stepped toward me, his face contorted in frustration. Shut up! Mom loved us! I met his gaze and responded in a calm, measured voice. She did love you, but your behavior didn't deserve it. My words made Jack clench his fists. This won't hold up in court. That's not entirely true. Let's go over the legal basis, shall we? As the attorney began to explain, their protests fell silent once more. Rose's will was created with a notary public present, making it legally binding. Furthermore, all ownership transfers have already been completed. Here are the documents for you to review. Robert sank into his chair, his face pale. Damn it, this can't be happening. Jack, still glaring at me, hissed through clenched teeth. You won't get away with this. The only ones who won't get away with this are you two. I locked eyes with both of them and delivered the final blow. You have one more significant issue to deal with, don't you? My words made them visibly uneasy. Yes, let's address that matter as well. The attorney pulled out another set of documents and laid them in front of them. Robert, this concerns your outstanding debts. Robert's face turned an even paler shade. This is a detailed list of your liabilities along with a repayment schedule. And then the attention turned to Jack. Jack, we also have evidence of your infidelity. We'll need to discuss compensation and the legal actions that will follow. Jack's face twisted with a mix of anger and despair as he glared at me. I've only taken back what was rightfully mine. The room was dominated by the deafening silence of Robert and Jack's defeat. As the attorney continued to lay out the facts, Robert and Jack's bravado evaporated. The anger that had colored their faces slowly gave way to fear and panic. Now, Robert, let's take a closer look at your debts. Your current outstanding liabilities total $250,000, and most of this is tied to high-interest credit card loans. The moment he heard the number, Robert collapsed back into his chair. That's impossible. I can't pay that. Additionally, the cards you claim as yours were under Rose's name and will now be repossessed. Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. Robert, isn't this just the result of all your hard work? My sarcasm cut deep, leaving him speechless. As for Jack, proceedings related to your infidelity are already underway. Additionally, you're being sued for $100,000 in damages, payable to Eva. At the mention of the sum, Jack slammed his fist on the table in fury. This is insane. It's completely unfair. Unfair? What you've done to me over the years seems far more unfair. Jack opened his mouth to argue, but found himself at a loss for words. You've both been using me this whole time. To you, I was nothing more than a maid, a caregiver, and a convenient tool. But not anymore. I'm not yours to use. My words seemed to pierce through them like daggers. You will both be required to provide further explanations during the upcoming legal proceedings. Here are your subpoenas. When the attorney handed them their subpoenas, Robert and Jack, red-faced with humiliation, reluctantly took them. It didn't take long for them to turn on each other, hurling insults and accusations. This is all your fault. You're one to talk. You've been wasting money on useless junk for years. I watched their pathetic squabbling with a calm detachment. After years of enduring their treatment, I was finally free, and I owed that freedom to Rose. Her love and trust had given me the strength to stand up for myself. Well then, this is goodbye. I stood, dignity intact, and walked out of the room. The sound of their shouting faded behind me, bringing me an odd sense of relief. After that day, I began a new chapter of my life. The first thing I did was clean out the house, now blissfully empty of Jack and Robert. It felt like shedding the burdens of the past, one item at a time. Rose had left behind her beloved kitchen tools and cherished family photos. As I cleaned and organized them, I felt her presence and clung to the memories she had left me. Her trust in me was like a steady foundation holding me up. At the same time, I began preparations to relaunch the family store. Taking inspiration from Rose's advice about knowing who you're selling to, I decided to transform the store into a true community hub. I partnered directly with local farmers and artisans, stocking fresh produce and handmade goods. The store quickly regained its vitality and became a gathering place for the neighborhood. On opening day, neighbors streamed in to show their support. Ava, you've done such an amazing job. Rose would be so proud of you. Their words warmed my heart. For the first time in a long while, I truly felt like I wasn't alone. Meanwhile, Jack and Robert were facing the full consequences of their actions in court. Jack's infidelity was proven beyond doubt, and he was ordered to pay the full $100,000 in damages. Robert, burdened by his debt, was forced to sell off nearly everything he owned to make payments. Their reputations and social standing were completely ruined. Jack moved into a small rundown apartment, scraping by on a modest income. Robert, having lost his retirement savings, was forced to live with distant relatives in another state. Their lives became constant reminders of the arrogance that had led to their downfall. As for me, I thought less and less about them and focused on my future. The store thrived, and I was able to hire new staff to help with the growing demand. I became involved in local events and charities, strengthening my ties to the community. With Rose's wisdom guiding me, I began to build a life that felt truly my own. One day, a young child visiting the store said to me, "Your store feels so happy." Hearing that, I couldn't help but smile. At last, I had found both freedom and happiness. One evening, standing outside the store as the sky turned orange with the setting sun, I paused to look up. For a moment, I felt as though Rose's warm smile was shining down on me from the heavens. It was because of her that I made it this far. Thank you, Rose. With that silent whisper of gratitude, I stepped forward into my new future.